And I'm glad to be here with you. So please join up if you're not here. You're not here yet. I'm waiting for you to join up, but I'll keep speaking while we wait for everyone to join up, both on Facebook and on Instagram. And while I wait for more people to join up, I would like to recap what we talked about last week, like I always do. So last week we talked about the power of support, and it was basically all about the kind of support we can give to individuals living with disabilities and special needs, and also to their parents. So I addressed friends and families, neighbors, uncles, aunties, schools, teachers, service providers, so therapists and facilitators and excuse me, religious organizations. And yeah, so we talked, and the society just realized that people on Facebook had missed out just a little teeny bitty. We just started about a minute or two ago. So I already recapped what we talked about last week, which is finding support, which is most of my topics are usually very easy to understand and to catch up with. And if you missed last week, please go to my YouTube channel and catch up on what we talked about. You know, everything about special needs is finding help with children with special needs, what we can do in our little ways, even if you're not a professional, the things you can do just to help this individual and make the world a more inclusive society for everyone. So that's for today. We're talking about the ABCs of behavior. And like I said earlier on, behavior doesn't have to be always negative. There could be there are positive and negative behavior. And behavior that we call challenging behaviors are the behavior that could be detrimental to the child, to the individuals in this environment. So if you have a challenging behavior in your classroom, that means it's very possible that your classroom will be disrupted. As a classroom teacher and as a parent, you need to be able to find a way around managing or modifying, that's the word, modifying a behavior that is not acceptable. So once again, I want to welcome you all. Thank you for joining in. James Awok, Isaac Osai Brown, all the way from California. Thank you, Yemi Ade, Yeye. Mwabu is Vivian. Hi, Vivian. Thank you for joining in. Okobi Ifeoma, thank you for joining in. Riverside 112. Z Umar, thank you all for joining in. Abimbola, thank you once again. So let's get to what we have to discuss today. You know, I always say to people that once we are able to manage behavior or modify a behavior that is not acceptable, it's easier to be able to get things done and have a smooth and good relationship with everyone. You know, most of the time we say children with special needs they have the social interaction deficit, and most time they are not able to relate with people. So you find out that they're just usually on their own because what is acceptable is not so much what they know to be the right behavior. So what we need to do is to be able to identify what's going on with them, what behavior are they trying to communicate, what is the function of the behavior they're exhibiting, and how best can we help them have a functional behavior and also like a behavior intervention plan. So I'll just dive into these topics little by little in bits and see how we can get it all together and have something to go away with, something really tangible to go away with today. So something happened, and I just thought, I could use that as an example like I always do. Something happened to me and my family today on our way back from church. Usually my daughter she's a very energetic child, and she likes to go out, which is good, not a bad one. She likes to go to the park, she likes to go to the arcade, she likes just to go out. Can I go here? Can I go there? And we try to be, and she's a very busy child, so we have a lot of things to help you know what, suck up the energy, so to say, you know. So we knew we were going to be busy this afternoon, and she had asked her father if they could go to the arcade yesterday, and he was so busy and could not take her. And that's one thing we need to really, thank you so much, Asai Brown. I'm trying to not to, Mr. Akin Benjamin, thank you for joining in too. So we're trying not to, we want to help her modify and manage the behavior appropriately. She has a lot of energy. So we had promised, not promised, we are told that we're going to take her out yesterday, but we're quite busy. Her dad was busy. And then she asked us, would she go out today? And we said, well, we could. But while we're going to church this morning, we realized that we're going to be busy later in the afternoon. So we said to her that I had to talk with my husband. I'm like, okay, what do we do about it? Because the truth is that if we do not take her out, of course, the energy level, we know what it is. And then we had already promised her we're taking her out, and then she's going to ask us the question. So what did we do? We thought, okay, what can we do? She's just 5. So we said to her, we had a little discussion we had on the way from church. We said to her, look, Taylor, we know you would want to go out after church, and we had that discussion yesterday. But look, guess what? Mama and Papa are going to be busy today, and they're going to be very busy. And we wish we could take you out, but we won't be able to. But what we're going to do is we're going to take you for ice cream for a few minutes, and then we'll go back home. Do we have an agreement? And she goes, so can I go out tomorrow? And we say, yes, of course, you can go out tomorrow. She's in the summer school, so she gets engaged and she can burn all of the energy she needs to burn. So we go out for ice cream, we go back home, and it's been like 2 hours now. Ordinarily, by now, she would have been, oh, can we go out now? But you said we'll go out. But what we did that I felt related to which relates to what we're talking about today, is that we realized that behavior will come up and we'll see it as somewhat a challenging behavior, because she's going to be disturbing us and she won't be able to have what she wants, and won't have our time to have what we wanted to do in peace. So we thought to exchange that behavior by being proactive. So we took her out, she had the ice cream, and it's been 4 hours now, and she had not said to us she wanted to go out. And I'm sure by the time she says she still want to go out and remind her of our agreement, then she'll be able to self-regulate herself and remember that, oh, there's no going out today. So that brings me to the ABCs of behavior. Now, there's something we call antecedents, which is usually we always say what happened before the behavior occurred. So what happened? What was the scenario? What happened? Most of the time we just think it's about we were eating, or it was 2 o'clock. It's not always that. There's something hidden. Sometimes there's some biological factors. There's some environmental factors. There are some hidden factors that we do not put into consideration before a behavior occurs. And then when the behavior occurs, we just feel that this child is just being difficult, or the child is just wouldn't listen. I know I've spoken to a lot of people, and I hear them talking about children with disabilities, and the way they just say, oh, that child will not listen, she wouldn't still sit, oh, it's that child, that's how she behaves. And I'm like, yeah, behavior is like a communication. And like I said earlier, it's not always negative. There's always a function of a behavior. So most times there's an antecedent, and then once you understand the antecedent of the behavior, so usually what happened before the behavior, what was the scenario, what triggered the behavior, so to say, that's always the antecedent. And then the behavior itself, be it positive or negative, is the behavior, which is it. So that's A is the antecedent, B is the behavior, and then C is a consequence. What happened after the behavior? Was it a positive consequence or a negative consequence? Now, what I realize is that the antecedent always determines what the behavior will be, definitely. So if the antecedent is modified or changed somehow, the behavior also will change. And of course, that will give us either a positive or a negative consequence. So I'm not going to be speaking over our head today. I'm going to try and use practical examples and just see how we can understand antecedent, behavior, and consequence. And not just that, because for me, when we understand that, it's now the usage, how we can use it and find a way to do it. Like, it doesn't have to be always formal assessment, but like a functional behavior assessment that helps you understand why the reason for the behavior, and then you can attach that behavior to the 4 main reasons for the behavior, functions of the behavior, which I'm going to talk about very soon. And then how can I use this behavior in a positive way? Most time we always advocate for positive behavior intervention. So that's always what is called the positive behavior intervention plan, or a behavior intervention plan. So every one of us need to understand behavior. We all relate with people. We relate with our neurotypical children. We have children with special needs that in our classrooms, in our homes, everywhere we go. Once we understand the ABCs of behavior and we can understand how to modify behavior, then half of our job is done. You find out that your classroom is very, very always on point, in the sense that once you've understood what you want to do, you find out that your class flows easily as a classroom teacher. And this also works for neurotypical children. So let's go to the main reasons why children with special needs exhibit the different kind of behavior that they exhibit. One is usually for access to tangible. So they want something tangible. They won't want it. So even when they're not speaking or they're speaking and they exhibit a particular behavior, one of the, well, a behavior could have more than one function, really. It could have as many as three or four functions. And then a behavior could also have one function. So we need to be observant. And I always say to people that work with children, even as parents, we need to know our children. We need to know that child in your class. You need to know what ticks that child. You need to know what that child does not like. You need to know what excites that child. You need to know what brings out the best in the child you're working with. So the first thing, the first function of behavior I'm going to talking about today is the access to tangible. That is A. So, and the other one would be avoidance or escape. So they want to avoid a task or they want to escape a task. Another reason is attention. So they want attention. They want you to notice them. They want to feel good about themselves, about something they've done. They want you to see them too, or they just want to what attention is. So you say, see me. I am. There's a word we say in Nigeria, see me, or like just see me doing something good, attention. And then they also want sensory. Yeah, so there's something we call sensory processing disorder. I read something earlier on that says that when you want to remember something, just keep writing it down. For me, sometimes the line of thought goes when you're writing. So that's why I needed to grab my pen and put something in order. That's what I'm discussing with you, so I don't forget. So what are the examples of access to tangibles? So like my daughter here, if she wanted, like the example I gave this morning, she wanted to go out. Going out for her is not an escape. It might look like an escape, but she knows when she goes out, she has table games that she can play with. There are lots of games she can play with. So she wants all of those toys, which have access to that particular, or a tab or something. So if, for example, I know that she wants that thing, and she had already told me she wanted that, and she says, oh, Mama, can we go out? And I already know that the reason for that outing is for access to tangible, which I know as a parent, knowing that my child loves everything in an arcade or in a playground, swing, whatever it is, she loves it. If she comes to me and says, Mama, can we go out? And I say no, and she begins to act up, bang things, cry, cause trouble with her brother, that will be a negative behavior. Now, if I keep shouting on her, saying you need to stop that, we're not going, and I do not give her reasons, that will be, the consequence will be that will be a negative consequence, because I did not address the behavior appropriately. But if I'd said, like the one I did earlier on, she says, Mama, can we go out? And we had spoken about going out. I had already given her reasons why we can't go out, and I'd already replaced that behavior with something else. So I told her that let's do this. Why don't we have ice cream as opposed to going out, because I'm going to be busy? And then she comes, Mama, can we go out? And I say, oh, Taylor, remember, we're not going out today because Mama will be busy. And remember, we already had an agreement that you have ice cream this afternoon and we don't need to go out anymore till tomorrow. You find out that behavior she won't throw things, she won't be angry, because we already had that discussion. And if she does, what I could do was either to ignore that behavior and let it go into extinction. So I could ignore the behavior, not the child. I hear people say ignore. You will not ignore the child, you ignore the behavior, because that child could get angry, could be banging, throwing things, or probably hurt. Maybe there's a glass around, or there's something dangerous that she could mistakenly hit herself or hit her head on that thing. And then if I'm saying I'm ignoring a behavior, that child gets hurt and the behavior is still ongoing. So we need to be watchful how we ignore behavior. So you could ignore a behavior by being sure that the environment is okay for the child to act out that behavior. Probably it's a tantrum, she's just angry that you're not taking her out, or you so for that kind of behavior, I will ignore that behavior and hope that it goes into extinction, as opposed to going, oh, you need to stop crying, I already told you, and then she keeps crying. Sometimes we are feeding on that behavior. When we do that, we are reinforcing the behavior. So a reinforcement is a stimulus or anything that happens to repeat a behavior. Okay, so the consequence for that behavior, for me saying no, we can't go out because you already had something, she could either walk away, which is a good behavior. So the consequence will be, oh, Taylor, well done. I mean, I like the way you just walked out, not making trouble out of this. I'm happy that you listen to me, I understand what I'm saying. Well, assuming she kept on crying and all of that, and I ignored the behavior, the possibility of that behavior going to extinction is very high, and the behavior will not repeat itself anymore. So this topic we're talking about today is quite wide, but I was hoping that we'll get something a little to be able to help our children at home, in our classrooms, so we can understand the functions of behaviors and see how we can help to modify the behavior, and hope that the child will have a proper behavior intervention plan and be able to get through situations. And I try to bring a situation whereby I don't want to jump because I need to make this break. I need to break this down. So, like I gave that example, the antecedent would be that the child had seen me, yeah, and the behavior is that he's trying to there. So it's like, oh, so Mr. Lola, this happened yesterday. We ate rice, and then the rice was salty, and then I spilled mine, and or another good example would be that maybe the child, so that's me trying to have an intervention with the child with dyslexia, and the child doesn't want to, and then it tries to divert the try to manipulate the instruction and try to avoid it, which I already know what's going on. And my consequence could be that I redirect the child. So I would redirect the child, and the child might stop that behavior, which will be a consequence, or the child and depending on my own response to that child, the child might not, it might reinforce the behavior. So the consequence can either be positive or negative. So whatever it is what affects the behavior. So if, for example, I say, keep quiet, and we continue working, the child might stop for that moment and continue to speak again. So what I'm trying to say is that ABCs or behavior, it helps us to achieve much. When you know the understand the behavior and the consequence, you're able to achieve much, and you're able to analyze the situation. It gives you a better way to be more productive with the child, or achieve something better with the child. I believe I'm talking to parents and service providers, be it a speech therapist, occupational therapist, whoever you are. We always find out that these children exhibit certain behaviors. So all I want you to understand today is there's always an accident, there's always a behavior, and there's always a consequence. So one of the say, okay, Fridays or every fortnight are the days we put on our dresses, so the child could show off his or her beautiful top that the mom just got, or their short or trousers, something, So you could try to have show and tell on those days and have the child show it to everyone, and every other person too would show it. That way the child is getting the attention he or she needs without disrupting your class. Or you could say, so I gave an example during one of our trainings recently where some children were building blocks, and then the other child wanted them to listen to a story he had to tell them, and he kept on hitting them, poking them to listen, and when they do not listen, he would throw off their things so they could face him and talk to him. So we said we could do, one of the ways to modify or to make sure that behavior is used appropriately is to probably have the child always, not the child, but you could have a program whereby everybody talks about something, or we have a time that is like, okay, tell us how was your day spent, or how was your holiday spent. But just put something in place where the child understand that there's a time for this and I get to do it, as opposed to say, okay, just hold on, you will soon tell me, and then you forget about it, and then the child thinks, the child remember and say, look, this person said, my teacher said to me that I was going to tell them about my story, and they didn't. And then the child thinks, okay, tomorrow, once I get to school, I'm not going to listen to her until they make me say my story. So like I said, most of the time, the reason for the function of the behavior, knowing the function of the behavior, it's not to put the function into extinction, but to be able to modify that function in the favor of the child and also for your own good, so that everything you're doing goes smoothly. After all, we all have needs. And by putting all of our needs into extinction, it's not the best. There are times we want to put the behavior into extinction if it's a negative one that's not acceptable, but it has to be gradual. And if sometimes that behavior is not disturbing you or the child in any negative way, then you can help the child modify the behavior in such a way that it's much useful to the child. So for sensory processing, which I said could be a dicey one, so sometimes some children want to bite, or they just want to pick on the skin because of the disorders. You could find a way to exchange that behavior by finding them something else to replace the behavior. So you could get a sensory blanket for the child if the child is the type that lost touch. They just want you to touch them. If the child likes to bite, to get a chewy, and teach the child the best way to modify, to work on that behavior. So these are some of the things you could do to be able to have a positive behavior intervention plan for that child. So it's always good to understand the antecedent, the behavior, the consequence. I even understand that you need to understand the function of behavior, which I said: attention, access to tangible, escape or avoidance of task, and then the sensory. It could be sensory, so we could say the behavior could be due to sensory processing disorder in the various senses of the child. So we need to understand what the function of behavior is. We need to understand and make up our mind if that behavior is acceptable, and if it is, and most times, usually, it's just that sometimes we just feel that, oh, that behavior, if the child is stopping my class, I need to tell the child to stop and all that. No, most times, I always say to people, these children are part of our families, so they have equal rights to everything that happens in the family, be it a child with special needs or not. That child is a part of your classroom. It pays the same school fees. It should be loved and cared for as every other child. All we need to do is to be able to modify the behavior and make sure it favors the child and favors us at the same time. So, and then, like I said earlier on, most of this behavior is not just exhibited by children with special needs, but all children. And I gave my daughter's Taylor's scenario as an example. So really and truly, we always have to be well equipped to do what we have to do, so we can get the best out of these children's behavior. So that's all I have for you to say to you today. I know it's easier to have an example and then try to tackle it, trying to find out the accident, the behavior, the consequence of the behavior, and then from that we can find a function of the behavior and find a better way to have a possible behavior intervention plan for the child, or have the functional behavior assessment done, so that we can know the best way to intervene to make sure the behavior is more acceptable. So here's a good time for you to ask me questions on how to help our children with challenging behaviors at home, in our classrooms, and all of that. I think I want to say thank you to everyone for joining in. Thank you, Tommy. Thank you, Christiana. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Iyala B. So Christiana says, thank you so much, sis, for this information. It's helping us build our children's confidence. Absolutely. So for neurotypical children, it's not always good to shut them down or tell them lies and say, oh, next time, make sure you understand the function of the behavior. Would you want the behavior to be repeated, and you love the behavior to be done appropriately, then you have a part to play. Thank you, Tony Ewumi, for joining in. Oh, Mr. Njokla, all the way from the UK, thank you for joining in. Unrelenting Cynic, thank you. Smith BM, thank you. Jennifer Hills Cole, thank you for joining in. Effect Oluwaja Kulapo, thank you for joining in. Princip, Bessie, all the way from India, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so Mr. Iyalabi is saying, please, how do you know when a particular behavior requires special needs attention? So every behavior has a function, and it could be any of the four. There's some other functions, but you need to be sure that is attention. And if it's an attention that it's not, so there's some attention. So even with adults, let me come to us adults, let me shake some tables. Indecent behavior, indecent dressing could be a form of attention-seeking behavior, where you have an adult showing off his boobs indecently or a part of their body. It's an attention-seeking behavior, and that might be a good way of saying, "Oh, when do you think this behavior requires special needs?" In the sense that I need an higher, somebody more equipped in behavior management to be able to work on this behavior. But most times for children with Facebook, let me see if I can get that up again. So it's always a thing of what exactly is the function of the behavior. Once you know the function and you say, okay, this child wants this all the time, is it good for this child to always want this? How can I make the child understand that this thing is asking for will not always be needed? So you can try and gradually put that behavior into extension, or you try to work out a plan such that the child does not feel that is being neglected. So I wouldn't say there's a particular behavior that is meant for special needs. We need to be well equipped. We need to be able to take data appropriately, and that's the work on our part. So most times when we have not done our own part, well, it's easy for us to just say, that child is just being difficult. I've done everything I know to do, and the child is not just, I now understand the function of behavior, I understand the function, I realize that this child just loves attention, and I've done everything to give this child the attention he or she requires, but still the child is not listening. You might need to speak to a professional. You might need to check if you're doing the right thing. Do you have all your evidence and data together to say, I did this and that, and I looked at this, I saw the function of the behavior, I was able to do a functional behavior assessment, and then I got an intervention done, and I did it appropriately. Everybody did this the same way. So if we all agree in the family or in class that this is what we're going to do when a behavior occurs, do we all stick to that behavior and to the modification plan that we have, or the intervention plan we have, so the child keeps repeating the behavior if we want it, or the behavior goes down if we do not want that behavior? There's a lot that we need to do, but we need to do our part appropriately before we can now push the blame and say the child is not responding to the plan you've put in place. So I think that's the best way I can answer that question. But really and truly, there's no one size fits all when it comes to behavior management. So Femi Joban, Tomi Oyekule, thank you. Shulapi Azazie, thank you for joining in. Thank you for this beautiful comment. Julipa Hillsco says, well explained. Thank you. So are there any more questions for me before I call it a day today? And I look forward to having you all join me again next week on Finding Help with Special Needs. So I await your questions. Any questions for me today? So while I wait for your questions, I need to let you know what I've been up to in the last few days. So I wrote a book on finding help with special needs. I don't know if I have it nearby, but before I talk about that, I need to talk to us about the trainings that have been ongoing. Has been ongoing. Yay! So this is finding out with special needs. I wrote it because I was quite concerned about the way people rate the issue of special needs. And I also just said something about special needs today. I said children who are gifted and talented are also categorized under special needs all around the world. So whenever you think of special, it's not just autism. Children with autism are quite a lot of them, because it's a wide spectrum. Some of them are really I could categorize them as gifted, because they see some things and they just say it within a split of a second, or a child will